Today's talk is called Do the Right Thing. I wrote it before the election, and I'm still thinking about the implications of what I wrote. Do the right thing. What does that mean? What is the right thing? Surely that depends on context and the consequences of a choice. When we don't pay attention to consequences, we often end up with the law of unintended consequences taking over. We are constantly choosing or being asked to. Some of our choices are posed in the form of surveys, some in the form of balloting. But only rarely do we make choices or decisions that influence matters of life and death. A modest example. Last week, while I was returning borrowed books, the town librarian asked me to participate in a survey. She placed a single sheet of paper on the counter that listed 5 children's books. We'd like you to circle your favorite. And I thought, well, this is innocent. Without her saying it, though, I knew I was being asked to vote. In this order, the paper listed Green Eggs and Hen, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Madeline, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and Winnie the Pooh. Without overthinking it, and familiar with 4 of the 5, I circled Winnie the Pooh. The librarian smiled and said, "A lot of people our age choose that one." Our age. Ha ha ha. She doesn't know how old I am, and I have no clue how old she is. But her comment reminded me that many large and small decisions are shaped by the generation we belong to and which decades we've weathered. Now, if we were living in the dystopian world of Fahrenheit 451, we wouldn't be asked to choose among any books of any type, because all books would be prohibited. The accumulation of knowledge and the getting of wisdom through reading would be discouraged. Looking back on the librarian's request a day later, I realized I hadn't actually asked her what the purpose of the survey was. I didn't know what its consequences would be, and I was a bit surprised that I hadn't thought to ask. Whether benign or malignant, choices have consequences. The election that came later was a good example of the need for informed and thoughtful critical choosing. We were all asked to select public officials and to approve or turn down proposals that our various governing bodies were going to monitor, direct, and fund. Now, the interesting thing about the sample ballot that I got in the mail was that it listed the names of candidates and their parties with no information about any of them. It also listed 2 proposals that were going to affect the state government. They were, in fact, amendments to the Constitution. For each of those, an interpretive paragraph was included. Although I couldn't fill in the sample ballot if I couldn't read, I could fill it in knowing absolutely nothing about the meaning of what was in there in terms of the candidates' names. I don't think that's right. Choosing among those names and proposals is a civic responsibility in this country, and we should be really prepared for it. As Gloria Steinem said, and I passed that on to you last March, voting is the least we can do, and we need to be informed voters. So what goes into our selections and our choices? Robert Frost reflected on this in his poem, The Road Not Taken, and I'm going to read it. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step, had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Like him, everything around and about us influences us. Our families and friends, our ages and genders, our backgrounds, where we used to live, where we live now, our educations and vocations, our outlooks on life, what we read, what we have experienced, what we've been taught, what we listen to, who we associate with, the religious teachings and philosophies with which we are familiar, and the media outlets we pay attention to. All of these shape our values and political points of view, whether we are conscious of them or not. The political choices we make reflect our sense of how to be in right relationship with each other and the world around us, and sometimes far beyond that. Reverend Richard Gilbert, who was raised as a Universalist, says this: traditionally, religion is considered a worldview incorporating an institutional affiliation and way of behaving. But religion, as I understand it, is a core of meanings and values out of which one lives one's life. In this sense, ethical principles and moral behavior grow naturally from the soil of a person's basic religious beliefs. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. He believes that, quote, the way we behave is in large part determined by what we believe, unquote. And he believes that ethics and morality are extremely closely related. Morality is a social understanding of rightness and wrongness, while ethics, he says, at its simplest, is the way we treat other people. He refers to a book written by another Richard Gilbert, no relation to him, but he talks about something that in 1994, I'm not sure if this is Richard Gilbert the minister speaking or if it was the author of the book. It's not really clear in Richard Gilbert the minister's work. It says there that we have entered the age of focus group morality. During political campaigns, candidates assemble groups that presumably reflect the views of Americans. The candidate then panders to the lowest common denominator among the group's members. Instead of leading with a vision of a nobler nation, the politician protects an image that will win the most votes. But whatever else ethics may be, it is not determined by majority vote. As Harper Lee wrote in To Kill a Mockingbird, the one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience. This reminds me of Jiminy Cricket in Pinocchio singing, "Just let your conscience be your guide." So, conscience reflects character, and you've probably heard that conscience and character are who you are when no one else is watching you, who you are when you are alone in the dark. Gilbert goes on to point out that ethics is a matter of choice, and if there is no choice, there is no ethical decision. If students taking an exam are seated 25 feet apart and are watched closely by the teacher, they do not face the choice of whether or not to cheat. But if the students are cheek by jowl and the teacher leaves the room, the students must choose what to do. Further, he says, if ethics is a matter of choice, there must be a process of choosing to do the right thing. He offers an 8-point moral compass, and on that compass are the topics of authority, motivation, responsibility, situation, intention, relationships, values, and character. In his own book, Reverend Gilbert offers a variety of case studies for each point of the compass. He wants us to think about how we choose and why we choose, and then to think about how we will act. Ethics, he writes, involves more than listening to sermons and learning moral principles. It involves engaging with this messy life that we live, with character. No theology or philosophy of life answers the question, so what? We need to consider the real-life implications of our beliefs to make our religious beliefs and values tangible. Now, I'm just going to share with you 2 case studies that he gives. One involves 4 men who are in a boat in shark-infested waters. One of the men falls out of the boat. 2 of the men are upset about that, but they don't say anything other than, oh no, he's out there with the sharks. And the 3rd man starts climbing over the edge of the boat to go and rescue the one who's gone overboard. The 2 who are still behind argue with him not to do that, saying, you can't do that. It's not responsible. You have a wife and small children at home. So the question here is, imagine yourself in that situation. What would you do? Would you jump in and go after your friend? Or would you stay in the boat, thinking about your family? The other question that comes up in this scenario is, who is behaving the most responsibly? The man who's willing to give his life to save another life, or the ones who are going to stay in the boat and not do anything? So that's one example of responsibility in making choices. How do you make that decision? Another example he gives is of someone who has access to several $1 million and wants to donate them to a hospital. Which department of the hospital is going to get the several $1 million? Is it a department that offers daily care to people? Is it a department that's funding projects, developing new procedures for the hospital? Is it a department that tends to the children? Is it the department that deals with oncology patients? Which department is going to get the money? And if not a department of the hospital, is there a patient in the hospital who might deserve the money? How do you choose? Which decision is the responsible decision? I'm sure you've all been involved in a situation at some time in your life when it was hard to make a choice, when you thought about the consequences. Samuel Johnson wrote that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know that phrase? Yes. Reverend Gilbert points out that the road to hell is also marked by something else, the harm that good people can do. Now think about that. If you are intent on helping, are you helping or are you controlling? Are you doing something for the right reason, something good but for the wrong reasons? Are you doing something bad for the right reasons? Yesterday morning I spoke with the librarian, well not yesterday morning, this is from a few days ago. I spoke with the librarian on duty about the survey I had participated in a few days earlier. And I said, you know, I was asked to circle the name of a book a few days ago, and I didn't ask why. And she said, oh, we're just trying to get more people interested in reading. Reading anything. And I said, I couldn't help myself. I said, so it's not for the NSA? She burst out laughing. I said, you know what I mean? And she said, oh yes, I know what you mean. So I said, well, what happens next? And she said, well, after Tuesday, we're going to display the winner. So, I was rooting for Winnie the Pooh. I chose Winnie the Pooh for president. Yes. And I'm sad to have to tell you that Winnie the Pooh did not win the election. Green eggs and ham won. And when I think about that now, I see some parallels in the larger election we just went through. But I'll leave you to think about that. If you haven't read Green Eggs and Ham recently, I suggest you give it a try. As part of the exercise of thinking about this sermon, was asked at one time to put together a list of ethical guidelines, and I put a sheet of paper at the end of each row with some of the ones that I came up with. You can pass the sheets around. I don't know that everybody has seen them, but I challenge you to consider making a list of ethical guidelines for yourself as reminders of the things that you value, that you think are important in your own actions and in your interactions with others. This is not a definitive list, it's just a starting place that I got to. I've heard many people come up with other ideas since reading this, and as I said, I encourage you to think for yourself about what your guidelines would be. When I talked about universalism a few weeks ago, I mentioned that the Universalists have a statement of faith, and it is not the same thing as a list of 7 principles, which in more humorous moments are referred to as the 7 suggestions. You might want to make a list of suggestions for yourself, of things to keep an eye on in your behavior and in your doings, remembering always that you have to consider consequences. You cannot just sail through life without considering what will happen next. If we have a couple of minutes, I'd like to open the floor to anybody who has any thoughts that came up from anything that I just shared. Debbie?
Your list reminds me of an abbreviated version of Fulham's book, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten,
Yes.
which I think is one of the best books ever written.
Yes, an excellent book. Do you all know those? Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? Can you remember any of the lines in there? Hold hands and look both ways when you cross the street.
If you open it, close it.
If you open it, close it.
Share nicely.
Share, yes. Take a nap every day. Yeah, very important for good behavior. Any others?
Shoes. Tie your shoes.
Tie your shoes.
Double nuts.
Yeah. Has anyone ever been in a life or death situation involving a choice? No. No. Somebody approached me once to describe one and said that he had never forgotten the anxiety of being in that situation, of having to decide. I've seen this many times in hospitals and in hospice care, when people are deciding how much longer to go, how much more to do for someone, and when to let that go. That, in my experience, is the most common situation involving that. Okay, then, we're going to take the offering now, and then we will sing Spirit